next year it's going to be superly good? Is that going to be likely because of the base effect, because the base has gone down significantly now, or is it going to be real good performance, compared to earlier? How do you see the financial services industry coming through, and where is this growth going to come from? Are there some sectors that you have in mind that you say that banks should lend to?
Credit growth, because it cannot be decoupled from economic growth, because it doesn't happen in isolation. Right. And with the overall growth being low, we're actually expecting banking sector credit growth to be no growth, or at best 1%. And if I can break this down a bit, right, on the corporate loan portfolio, which is about 50% of banking sector, it's going to be hugely hit and massive degrowth. Even retail lending, which has been, the flag bearer over the last couple of years, which constitutes 25% of the overall portfolio, we're actually seeing it fall. So again, if you think about it, the demand for housing loans, the demand for vehicle loans, commercial vehicles, right? And here again, where you see demand and, no taking away from all what we've heard so far, because you are seeing that demand on the rural side, no question, but it's not moving the aggregate numbers.
Right.
The two areas of growth this year are going to be agriculture, 3 to 4%. And believe you me, the MSME loan segment, which we think will grow 6 to 7%. But that's largely on the back of the guarantee scheme, the emergency credit guarantee scheme announced by the government. And from the banking data that we're already seeing, from the estimated 3 lakh crores, 1.7 lakh crores has already been sanctioned, and 70% of that has been disbursed as well. So in some ways, you have to look at how and where the overall growth is coming. An important point of note on next year. See, if this is how it is and it is no growth, and let's all hope, and I'm going to use that as my base case to talk about where we see growth coming. It is imperative that we do not see a second wave. And by the end of the year, actually starting October, the spread of the virus gets curtailed. Because at the moment, if you looked at a bulb lighting up the different districts, there are hardly any white spaces left versus, the data that we had seen in June. And why is that necessary? Because let's say the rural economy sees massive spread of the virus. The healthcare support available there is not strong enough. Today, the fear psychosis hasn't entered that, psyche, and then you'll struggle from a winter crop, sowing, etc. All the tailwinds that we are seeing. Assuming that is not the case, you will see a bounce back of growth next year, but it's on a very weak base. And if I just added up and gave you 2 data points, we're actually talking of 13% permanent loss of GDP. So it will take us nearly 2 to 3 years to get back to 19 levels. So it is optical to say that the growth next year will be strong. Of course it will be strong, but on what kind of base we are talking?
Right.
And in all of this, there is definitely need for a little bit of change in lending models, underwriting. I really like the point that a lot of my colleagues have been making on the panel. This is the time to understand the customer much better, because buying preferences are changing. Also, you see, the one thing in India around credit culture, it took so long for the credit culture to come, and it was really painful. Right? Look at the kind of losses and the way NPAs for the banking sector went all the way up to 11% by 18. It was because it was like, it's my birthright to take the loan, payment I will see. With the introduction of the IBC, all of that changed. See, the pandemic, we run the risk of again spoiling that credit culture. between the moratorium and the restructuring. You don't want that to happen. And which is why the quality of underwriting has to go up manifold. Also, hitherto, the sectors that did not borrow too much are perhaps going to see the need, like the pharma sector, because there is strong demand.
Yeah, Ashu, you're bringing me to the next question, which is perhaps even the topic of this entire discussion. So I'll open up that question for the entire panel to take. That is, how are you reimagining the lending basket? You're practitioners of the credit policies that the regulator sets. So how are you going to reimagine your lending basket to expand it to newer sections of borrowers? By this you can also help those who've been impacted most by the pandemic. And but as financiers, would you have the confidence to lend to newer sections which have been hitherto untouched? Mr. Srinivasan, you want to go first?
See, certainly this has got to be segment-led, and it's not something that you can have a sort of a universal broad brush approach. So you will pick the segments that are have a greater potential to come out of this and faster, and certainly go after that. But I do want to point out, everything is not only by the segment. There are winners in every segment, right? And you can't believe that in any category which may have a generic problem, there will be an A++ in that. So I would think that the thought process that all of us will exhibit is certainly to go after. The problem will be there'll be a congestion of going after the best, right? And therefore, you should speak to the premium player in any industry category. Their life is a party now. People are breaking doors to give them loans at 4%, right? Yes. And not just any player. The largest player in the country will write a check of 3,000 crores at 4%. They'll crowd out everything. So I think the storyline is going to be, again, I'll go back to what Ashu pointed out. One is coming back to 19 or early part of 20, and then sort of playing into the India's larger option. So the time horizons over the next 2 years are going to be very different. The business outcomes are going to be very different. And first is to strengthen our core platforms, then go after segments that we believe we can, because there is money available. Liquidity is, everybody is flush with liquidity. So you have to chase the kind of credits that you're most comfortable with, for which, whether we like it or not, one is the using the native, I know the customer, I will understand customer at a native level, but you can't hide from the fact that data and information is going to change profoundly, right? And even the customer doesn't know today how his behavior is changing, because they're all readjusting. There is no template to all that has happened ever since time was born till the COVID came. So there's a very, very fundamental construct change happening. Business has to have to readjust to that and become sort of outthink and come up with answers. But the segmental approach will continue. But that said, I don't believe that only you will go after IT and pharma, which is a toast of the nation or toast of the world. There will be a winner in every segment. Suddenly you will find that if the government opens its purses, that doing roads is damn good. So what if it's 15 years? We've all stayed away from it. But there will be a very blue chip name, maybe with a guarantee that you would go after.
So my question is, will you go to the newer segments? During my father's generation, they all bought houses only when they were nearing retirement. But you changed that. You started giving out loans to people who are in their 30s, because then you are looking at their future, you're looking at their future earnings, future potential.
One point, and I'll leave it to others to explain. Generally, I think what is going to happen is there is going to be a lot of test and lend, test and lend, test and lend.
Right.
Everything is going to be, we use internally the whole theme of sachetization. Everything is going to be made into small packets. Time or ticket packets is going to change. And everybody is going to be wiser by all the pain and try to do it, because not doing it is not an option, but doing it wisely is an option. And therefore you will all find everybody is going to try some kind of, transactions which are bite-sized, can live with the pain, but you can't just stay away. I mean, then you may not be a bank or a financial institution.
Logistics and food processing are areas where today the lending share is all of 5%. I mean, how are we looking at newer models there? I mean, if you see the one sector where employment is picking up, and you look at urban for a minute, it's all around your delivery boys and things like that. What about business models on the urban side there and broader, because see, with the recent, the free trade for the farmer, right? There is bound to be investment on the warehousing side, on supply chain, inventory, because that is where, you know, we can actually transform in a way India, because that sector used to be one of the laggards for decades. So
Right.
there is a little bit of
Yes, Mr. Iyer. Will you lend to a new business model, say in agriculture?
We will have to have the equity investment of the borrower. I think at the end of the day, financial services is an enabler. You know, we are imagining financial services will create demand. I think converters are demand. The customer has to first see that there is a need for I'm talking more of retail as an NBFC. He has to find a need for a vehicle, and the manufacturers have to find that customer who has a need for the vehicle. If you think that by providing credit, the demand will get created, I think we are writing future NPS in some form. Because the entire financial services struggle is for the 10% of the people who don't pay. 90% of the people, you use digital, you use physical, you use any method, they are going to pay, right? It's the 10% where the problem is, you know, just to address Sanjay's point when he said a lot of things are getting digitized and things have changed. Of course they have, but unfortunately, you know, that's one side of the lending. The real success of the entire financial services model is collecting up to the last rupee. But the 10% of people who don't pay are not earning to pay. They are not necessarily intentional defaulters. They could be circumstantial defaulters. So my take on future would clearly be, we will all have to find a model of finding whom we will not give rather than finding who we will give. I think so far the approach has been, you know, who all we want to give. And we will have to start filtering that to say that, okay, who we will not give. So if I have 7 million customers I've worked with, I will have to use that data and model the next incoming customer into one of those segments and prototype them to say, okay, this customer is similar to this customer in my book. I will look at the behavior of that customer in the past and impose on that what is changing for that customer, because I have visibility of their behavior past and post-COVID. I will use the post-COVID behavior and say, oh, this customer can be given only this. You could be blamed for it at the end of the day, saying that you didn't help convert the demand. But I think the fundamental question we have to ask is, are we just here to participate in ensuring the demand is met? Or we are here to participate in ensuring that quality demand is met so that it sustains and stays longer? Otherwise, we are shifting the problem from this year to 2 years later or 1 year later, or maybe, I don't know, whatever that period is. And we will be handling another set of problems there, which will be more severe than COVID is. So I think it's important to, you know, ask, and this will take back again, my last comment would be, how much do you know about the business to which you're lending? I mean, if I'm lending on a tractor, do I know what are the real uses of tractor? Is it just farm? Is it farm plus haulage application? And what is his earnings going to be? What is his cash flow? I think we have built a model over a period of time by this physical interaction of plotting a customer cash flow. I think this will continue to remain important, that you should know to plot a customer cash flow if you're deciding to lend. We will use technology, we will use data, we will use all means, but they will address 50-60% of the lending business. The other 40% of the business will still remain the way it was traditional, because the customer has to earn to repay, and we must have a means to handle that. And if he fails, we must have a measure to handle the collateral that he's returning back to you, and you must have that ability to handle. So it is going to assume an end-to-end approach with putting filters on whom we will not lend to and making employees relevant. It's going to be a continuous training program for employees how to handle future. We should not use the same past process, past approach and go into this new tomorrow. So the process will have to be rewritten. Employees will have to be retrained to handle the new ways. All of us as managers have to rewrite the questions that we normally ask during our review with our branches. There is no point in asking a question, why is your NPA high? You have to go deeper to ask which type of customer in which business, what kind of application of the product you're seeing the NPA grow, and take that as an input to stop lending in those segments in future. I think the review mechanism of the asking questions have to become more relevant. So I stop there. I think these are the changes which will happen to business and business models.
Slightly contrarian that as financial services institutions, we can just be enablers. We will have to be stronger advisors to offer those, to your point about earlier, higher interaction, better understanding means we can enable entrepreneurs. We can make and advise people into entrepreneurs, because if you've got, at the end of the day, what is the interaction going to be if it is not going to be advice? Right. So otherwise the interaction is just, a pure transaction, in which case there is no relationship. So I do think the second point is, I agree with you that the interaction is critical, but it has to we have to have a very careful thing that it needs to enable data to offer more insight rather than become anecdotal. Because the nervousness I do have is that this period is going to produce a lot of anecdotal data. I spoke to a customer who was going left, and I spoke to a second customer who was going right. So therefore, unless and until we can assimilate data to figure out where the direction in this chaos is, it'll be quite a problematic thing that we end up, going helter-skelter based on one interaction, because the interactions are quite, earlier to Sanjayji's point, people are in survival mode. There's a stop start, because somebody says, okay, this is a good month, and a family member falls ill, all hell breaks loose, and he's shutting the whole shop down. So, and to Mr. Ghosh's point, I do think we are in a festive period, where everybody is itching to go and say, okay, let's put this behind us. But to Ashu's point, there is a major risk, right? The risk is that, there is going to be a lot of social interaction, and let's face it, that is one of the biggest risks to, this current pandemic. And you don't come up at the end of a short period where that enthusiasm and the Indian resilience to say, oh, let's just put this behind us and go head on, and start to embrace this, produces another wave of, surge. And should it go and hit rural? Because I agree with Ashu's point, all data interaction suggests that there is a higher degree of resilience in rural right now, to the extent that people are willing to assume that they are currently safe and cut off. That if that emotion hits rural, that will be a major challenge to worry about. I also agree that I think there are some sectorial points that, Mr. Srinivasan made about, that where we can go behind. But we have to be careful that we have sectorial expertise. Otherwise, the challenge will be that, you go behind a lending bouquet, and, you say, okay, you are the chief lender, I'm the second, and you end up with low margin, and dare I say, in public sector margins, right? Versus, if you have sectoral knowledge, you become the primary, leader in that, and therefore you take the higher margins, which again, that's where, again, there'll be a whole lot more investment required in data and analytics, in my view, to understand the better those sectors that you want to go chief lending into.
There is a big opportunities of agriculture-linked infrastructure development. If I say that in the agriculture production increasing, because if we see that the last 20 years, 1% of the water supply for irrigation have been increased in country. So of course, the cultivable land is increasing, but there is an 1/3 of the storage available for keep the production of the crop. So there is not enough warehouse and cold storage for preserve this type of crop. If it is not in there, the farmers will not get the appropriate price and non-seasonal time to sell it on that. This is a big opportunities for our country. And of course, the road infrastructure is happening. That is also given that opportunities to farmers' income will become up. Second point, which I got from my bank perspective, I say that what is my learning from the customer point of view. India is a big country and unbanked people is a huge. If you go to this rural, very correctly mentioned Mr. Iyer, that is on that the equity development to the people to invest such a way where bank will be like to leverage it and lending it to make the cold storage or this type of warehouse. But if you see that 11% of the total bank branch are serving to the rural people where the 70% people are living on that. So until the bank branch are not coming to the rural more, so people are not getting the chance to build up their own equity, then bank also not coming to lending on that. People have money, but that money is not in a system, it is a cash. When you go to any of the hospital, is a private hospital in city, we see that the rural people has come and given that the use cash for treatment. That means they have the money that is not yet captured by the Indian banking branches are not available in that area. It should be like to focus on that. And my Bandhan Bank perspective, which I see that the credit growth is coming from the two part of that. One is a new to credit, another is an existing customer. It is an enhance or multiple product will come on that. 20% of my new customer is coming new every year. And 10% is coming from the growth of the existing customer. So 30 to 35% easily coming to the credit growth on the basis of these two. So this is a COVID situation. Of course, we are not maybe reached to the customer. Customer is coming and 60% new customer adding. So that is also customer demand is there. Not maybe the normal time, but the demand is also gradually increasing on that.
No, I just wanted to make a point. We talked about logistics business, urban possibilities. Will leasing come back as a new format? It's not been there for very long because of the tax issues and things like that. Now that most of it is fixed through GST and input credit is available, etc., I somehow believe that asset-light model, especially logistics company, will not want to own these vehicles, etc. Possibly leasing will come back as a good format to look at into future, and that will help financial services in a way participate in a larger quantum being lent to such large companies who can then get into these businesses rather than they investing, and which is going to be a difficult one. So I thought I just make the point. This is my view, but there could be some views around is leasing a possibility of tomorrow.
Mr. Iyer was saying, Sonali, that you can't just say that NPAs have grown or NPAs have, climbed so much. We have to identify, right, where the NPAs have grown, which industry, which kind of business, what kind of customer. And that is so easily done by data, right? The kind of data and the kind of digital technologies that we do. So why is it so difficult for us to understand where the delinquencies are coming from and take corrective steps in that? When data, providers like yourself, you are experts at gleaning this kind of information, so, and where is the banking industry going in terms of the digital initiatives? Is it only about, like Mr. Ghosh was saying, in the rural areas, you need branches, but if you are going to open new branches, that's a cost, and that is going against the whole grain of digital banking and the growth of digital banking, right? So you can reach out to rural areas even with smartphones, and connections and digital banks these days, digital branches, which are non-existent in brick and mortar format. So just generally the group, starting with Sonali, and then I'll come to Sanjay and the others, just want to have a little bit of 10-minute kind of talk on the digital aspect and where exactly we are going on this.
Yeah, so no, I think we did here, and if I heard most of the panel here did agree. I think that both around whether we look at using data increasingly, whether it's identifying which are the likely hotspots for future delinquencies or which are probably already sitting, but also increasingly for underwriting, right? I mean, how do we use customer insights and convert that into, or rather than just using anecdotal, but use the customer interactions and convert them into insights for better underwriting, right? I think even when we looked at the sectoral allocation and what Mr. Srinivasan said around which are the sectors where we are seeing a lot more demand probably coming in, I think even within, so while there will be a sectoral analysis that you could draw, but even the sort of the second level of analysis would be around the individuals who are operating those companies, or the the SMEs who are, or the business owners who are actually managing these small and medium businesses, what is their individual resiliency towards taking a crisis like this, right? And how do we use data to sort of assess that? So both from an underwriting perspective, from collections perspective, I think that's where we do see a lot more interventions happening for certainty, right? And I think if you look at the way customers are reaching out to whether it's a branch bank or whether it's sitting at home and interacting, I think even if it is what we are seeing, even if it is at a branch, you have low cost options today to enable that interaction via technology and converting that into data and insights for future. I think that's what is going to be even more critical.
I just want to open up the digital question to everybody. Sanjay, you want to go first?
Yeah, for me, digital is honestly is inevitable, right? You cannot have a choice now. And the way the last 6 months, and I would again reiterate that the kind of adoption has happened, and the kind of India is giving the solution from entire thing, whether it's a payment space, whether it's credit scorecards, whether it's analytics, whether it's an acquisition, so now there is a fast tag, right? I'm just giving an example, right? The fast tag is compulsory, and I do vehicle finance and commercial vehicle finance, and Amisha would agree, the fast tag has to be automated now, right? And being a bank, it's so good that my customer takes a fast tag for me, so I know how well is using that, right? Or whether it's using the QR code, right? Whether it's using some banking account with me, I can talk to him through banking. I can actually call him and say, where are you? Can I talk to your family? Can I talk to you for other aspect? So I think the digital is there, right? And I'm very sure that Shamsha would agree that AU won't be requiring a 5,000 branches in next 10 years to build like a HDFC Bank. I might be doing it half of that. My size will go down. My number of the branches will go down because I'll be more effective because of this digital channels availability. And I'm very gongo, honestly. The point which Piyush was talking about the figuring out the credibility of a mithai shop. Now I have put in the QR code with him. Now I have put in a POS machine with him. Now I don't require, and I have a bank account with me, right? So I don't require to send my person to him to figure out his credibility or his viability, right? I have certain data with me. So I can now talk to him through video banking. I can talk to him through different channels. I can lend him, right? So I think this will be in next 10 years in this country. And we as a banker, has to adopt this sooner than later. So, that's my take on the subject, that digital it's not about the so-called DG is about the convenience, is about the approach, is about the how customer view you, it's about 24/7, because honestly, bank only operate for 22 days, but because of digital channels, we can operate 30 days, right? And 24/7. So I think this will become very big in times to come. And I'm only saying this pandemic, it has created hell of the job for us, but the only one thing which has the silver lining is the adoption. And I think many rules and regulation which was not up there has been approved by RBI, Government of India, just because to facilitate, right? Mm-hmm. So my take on digital is very high, and I believe banker is not only to lend, banker is also to get the payment done. Banker is also about building deposits. And I would say for me as a AU bank for next maybe 6, 7, 8 quarters, should be to build more engagement, should be build more liability base, should be built through payments, through whatever way, right? And let's be cool around asset, because we cannot create a demand. The demand has to be outcome of the environment, right? And that an environment has to be created by Government of India, the RBI, the whole private sector. I do not know. We being a banker only support the demand, right? So I will say that, for me, I would want to chill and sit for my asset growth. And I would really want to focus on my engagement through digital channels, for my liability and payments.